Hello, how's it going? Welcome back to the Eddie V show. I am just realizing I forgot to hang the crucifix and the picture, but we do have them. This was a gift from a friend. Shout out my boy. It's really beautiful. And then I have a picture that I got from my family of Mary. I was gonna put them up before the show, but I forgot and we're already live, so we're gonna just keep going. We're gonna continue. We're gonna work through it. If I'm gonna try to have it tomorrow. I'm gonna try to have it tomorrow. That's the goal. But welcome back. Welcome back to another week. Excited to be here with you. Today I decided I'm going to finally do the spiritual testimony. I did my health testimony like a long time ago, and I teased that I was going to do my spiritual testimony, and it just felt right today to do it. It's been a while. I haven't thought about it, but then today I was reading about virtue actually. It was making me think about my life. So then I was like, oh, I want to do it. I want to do it today. So it's going to be very casual. It's going to be not super organized. I haven't usually I write stuff down and I organize my thoughts, but today we're just going to, it's my life. So hopefully I know something about my own life. It might be a longer episode too. So just to warn you, obviously, if you're watching the replay, you already know that it's long. But before we get into that, I do want to just black pill for a second. I saw this report and I thought it was crazy. So this is a report. This is actually I read Rerum Novarum, which is a great like Intel channel. They're on Telegram, they're on X. I usually look at them on Telegram. But they were reporting that this private reporter put out this information that, and you can just like Google this, it's not like hidden knowledge or anything. But he discusses how, and I'll just read the headline. Americans bet over 165 billion on sports last year, which is more than they spent on movies, books, concerts, and sports tickets combined. I thought that was insane. That's crazy. And I've been someone that I tell people, and I really try to advocate against specifically like online betting, sports betting, stuff like that. I used to be really into poker and stuff. I like that stuff more, but even that stuff I just think is a huge waste of time. If you enjoy it and you're having fun, I think it could be cool because you got to spend money anyway. But for the most part, it's to me it's a little rough around the edges. But that statistic just blows my mind. And I think that speaks to where the culture is at today, where we are located in the spectrum of terrible, awful to somewhat functioning. It's pretty crazy. I would love to think about that more or talk to people that know more about sports betting and why people do it. I think it's just the adventure and the thrill of it, which could speak a lot, but that I don't have a lot of experience with it. So I just want to share that with you. I'm not sure how much my listeners keep up with like kind of this regular news stuff, regular cultural news. But I see that as a bad piece of news. I see that as you have probably a lot of young men. I don't know if women are sports betting. I don't know any statistics, but I assume it's young men who are just looking for a rush and they are unable or unwilling to get it from other places. So they're just on their phone betting on sports. And you know how I feel about like watching professional sports. I think it's the craziest thing ever. I did it a lot when I was young. Now I really advocate against it. If you love sports, like go to like the local. I know people are gonna be like, well, they're not as athletic, they're not as talented. It's like, oh, okay, do what you got to do. And someone was talking about, and I do agree with this. It's so weird when people wear like a famous sports person's jersey, it has like their name on it. It's like, oh, it gives off like slavery vibes. It gives off huge cuck vibes. I don't have like an intricate argument about it. It feels wrong. Maybe I can just appeal to people's common sense. Wearing another man's name on your back just seems weird. Anyway, that's gonna be forever attached to my spiritual testimony now. I just wanted to mention that really quickly. Let's get into the spiritual testimony. I'm going to be going through, I guess, basically my whole life spiritually. The younger part, I think I'm just going to quickly go through as much as possible because there's not really a lot going on there. And then we'll get into more of my early 20s is when things start to get cooking a little bit, and then we'll try to go up to the present day. We'll see how it goes. All right, let's do it. So spiritually, I am a practicing Catholic, which apparently for surveys that just means I go to mass every Sunday, but I like to think it's more than that. But I'm a practicing Catholic. I was not necessarily raised Catholic. I was baptized at 4 with my brother who was 2 years old. I wasn't aware that I was baptized. And then we can kind of fast forward because I had like no religious understanding or upbringing until I was about 12. And what happened at 12 was my mother, she decided to convert to the Catholic faith. She was raised with no religion as far as I understand it. And she said some different things. I'll just make it really simple because it's her story. It's her story, not his story. Not history. No, I'm just kidding. But she was kind of just feeling like a certain like spiritual emptiness, and my dad had been a cradle Catholic, so she kind of just chose that. I don't know if there might have been influence from my Italian grandma, but I'm not specifically sure. This is just what I've heard. So when she converted, I was going to get the sacraments in the Catholic Church. So I had to go to this Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday night classes. It didn't seem like there was a lot of them, but it must have been a good amount of time. I don't know if she was like late in signing up or something for RCIA, my mom. So I was put into that. And in that class, I started to get more exposure to just like being at the church that I go to, my parish. And also, I guess just getting like any sort of like actual structured education on any sort of religion in general. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember like a single thing that they taught us. I know we had Bibles and I know that we opened them. And I did to a certain degree understand that it was a Bible, and I just understood the Bible as like really old book was what I understood it as. I don't even think I remembered any of the Old Testament stories or anything from the New Testament. I probably couldn't have told you who the Lord was at all. I don't know if it was the teachers or it was just me. I had some friends in that class, so I know I was talking a lot. I don't even remember about what. I was just talking. So yeah, I don't know if it was my fault or their fault or no one's fault. But one thing I did take from that, and it later on it becomes valuable, and it was valuable then too. But they were having us memorize certain prayers. I imagine it was the Hail Mary and the Creed as well. But the one I remember was the Our Father. And from that, for whatever reason, I kept the Our Father. I was able to pull that out in college, which we'll get into, and recite it from heart. Even though I didn't know anything what the different petitions and lines were saying of the Our Father, I didn't even know it was from the Bible, but I memorized it for whatever reason. So that was powerful. I wouldn't really say it until college, which is crazy as far as I remember. But that was at 12, and then I got first communion and probably first confession, which I don't remember, and confirmation. And confirmation I definitely did get because I have I got a certificate for that one. The other ones you don't get a certificate, which the church is pretty good about it seems, about documenting baptism, confirmation. So that's that. And then you can fast forward because I'm not thinking about anything religious or anything until through high school, because I was in middle school and that happened through high school. And then in the beginning of college, I did kind of think a little bit about it. I think not necessarily Christianity, but like maybe like I was always thinking about death. I should probably rewind to that. I was always thinking about death, but it was like a scary thing to me. I wasn't thinking about heaven and hell. I was just thinking that maybe it would be like nothingness, but I was just really scared of it. And I thought I was going to die at 21. For whatever reason, I thought I was going to pass away at 21. So I was like, oh, I gotta live it up. I gotta do all things, which is kind of dumb thinking, looking back now. I was like, if you're going to die at 21, it doesn't matter, especially if you don't have an understanding of anything religious or the afterlife. Why you got to live it up? What's the advantage of that? So that was high school ish, being a little scared to death, very scared to death, honestly. And another thing in my childhood is I was never taught to or no one discussed with me virtue and vice, which I think is something that is so abandoned nowadays. Kids do not understand this stuff, nor do they care about it if you try to talk to them about it. I think it's something you have to, not have to, but it's, maybe I should say have to. You need to start talking to your kids about happiness, being a good person, what that means. Not just be like, not just say to them, be a good person, but like talk to them about what that means and how that relates to human flourishing, human happiness. What does it mean to be a human? But I didn't get any of those discussions. One thing I was taught, I lived in like a semi-political family, so politics came up a lot, kind of just generic rhino right wing stuff, libertarian stuff. One thing I was taught, which um, I've talked to the people in my past, and they said this is not possibly true, but I for some reason I remember it, but I remember being told like the truth is very important and you should follow the truth. And even though I was told that and I didn't practice that, I like held on to that as like some sort of like golden rule to follow throughout my years, even though I wasn't doing it necessarily. So that was interesting. And then yeah, I was kind of just taught like be a normal, nice person. Not really specifically what that means, but don't be a nuisance. Not even respect authority really, but like respect some authority. But it was just really interesting. And not suburban life, nothing super crazy, I would argue. So that was high school, middle school, elementary school. And so that's where I am. I'm like kind of agnostic. I'm like, there's probably a higher power, but I'm not going to think about it at all. I'm going to think about death a lot, mostly being afraid of it. And I'm kind of just going to try to live a balanced yet hedonist yet focused on money lifestyle. There was no thought process in this. I like to joke with people like I don't think I had a conscious thought until like freshman year of college. I like to joke, and even probably later than that. But I'll talk about that. So I went to college. I won't say the school. I guess I don't know if it's helpful. But I went to college at a large state school, studying engineering, mechanical engineering. But I was in the honors college of the school, and so the first 2 semesters of the honors college, you had to take this class, which was basically reading classic literature from like all different cultures and religions. And I remember actually enjoying the class. I used to think like humanities were stupid because they didn't make money, which is kind of crazy now thinking about it. But I remember I was forced to take this. I would have never taken this voluntarily at the time, but I was forced to take it. And we were reading, modern, semi-modern stuff like Hemingway, but also reading like ancient Hindu stuff. We were reading like Plato's Republic, other Greek authors. I don't know if we got into Roman philosophers. We might have read Marcus Aurelius. We were listening to music. We were listening to like Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, kind of jivey. Reading, some of the 1900s people, reading some poetry. So it was interesting. And it kind of got me thinking like, not like I wanted to look into religion or spirituality or anything, but it made me it helped me to understand that there was prior knowledge because my understanding of history was like nothing before that. But it gave me an understanding that, oh, people were writing about stuff before and they were kind of trying to figure things out before. So I can also access that myself. There's libraries and things where I could read what they were thinking about. If I remember correctly, there's not a lot of Christian stuff in that class, though. And my first semester teacher is a woman. She might have been like Hindu. I'm not going to lie to you. She was definitely Indian or, Southeastern Asian. Yeah, I don't think African. So kind of interesting. I just thought about that right now. I can remember her face. I can barely remember how she talked. So kind of interesting. So that was kind of initial exposure. And even with the friends I had in college, though, I still wasn't talking about anything deep. I wasn't trying to figure out the mysteries. I was kind of just like, oh, I can read stuff, historical stuff, and people historically maybe were trying to figure out life too. And so fast forward through college. College was very weird for me because I was having a good time, but I also had like this nagging, maybe emptiness, you could call it. I was thinking, is this all there is to life? You just get a job and you kind of enjoy these different experiences and they kind of just get old and there's no like end goal or something like that. I was kind of having like this nagging thing. I started to not hang I started to not hang out with the people I usually hung out with, like starting sophomore year, junior year. I started to branch out a little bit. I still had like a main group of friends, but I wanted to talk to other people and just get like some perspective. I wasn't thinking like religious or anything, just like some perspective on life. What do they think is important? So I started hanging out with some engineering people. I had some friends from high school that were still there that I hung out with. And but I'm not really thinking hard about anything at all, to be honest. But I am starting to like muse on what my life is about and trying to think about, what was a person supposed to do. I was thinking like, should I go in the military and just get like glory, stuff like that? What is life about? And I was a pretty even keeled guy at this point, dating and stuff, doing good in class. I didn't think, and people are surprised by this. I think it's because I'm Asian or something. I did not earn this at all. Maybe just a gift from God, but I did not think engineering was hard. There's also, some of the classes were kind of a joke, maybe too. Yeah. There was definitely people smarter than me, but I just did not have a lot of trouble. Still had stress, like a test coming up. I'm like, oh, I should study, but nothing crazy. But fast forward to my senior year. My senior year, I'm like almost getting super zen. I've started in like my sophomore, junior year, I'm like dabbling in yoga. I was even dabbling in yoga in high school, but it was just because my girlfriend a couple of times at the time wanted me to do that. She wanted me to go to yoga with her, and I was like, it's more of like an exercise thing. That's how I thought of it. But in my sophomore, junior year of college, I started a friend of mine. She was really into yoga. A friend of hers was really, really, really into yoga. So I started getting into it. I still thought of it mostly as like as an exercise thing for the body, but then I started thinking of it as like, calm my nerves, kind of mindfulness stuff like that. So that I kind of started to get a little more hippie, I guess. I was still pretty hippie before that, but not in like a yoga way, more in a like I just don't care way. So that was interesting. And then getting to my senior year, so I have this yoga thing, I have this, oh, what is life about thing going on? Because I'm just kind of like blah about everything. And then my senior year, I don't know why I started to do this, but I had a basically two jobs and was doing full-time mechanical engineering my senior year. And I just remember feeling like kind of the pressure of it. Not I wasn't anxious or I don't think I was anxious, but I was just like, this is a lot. Like every day I'm like waking up and I'm right when I'm waking up, I'm going. Like I'm going to job, I'm going to class, I'm going to other job, I'm going to social event. And I made this attempt or this pact with myself. Like I need to find like 30 minutes to an hour to just like be myself and like relax. So I remember it was like Tuesday, Thursdays. I would have work in the morning until a certain time, and then I had a class in the early afternoon. So I would drive to work, drive back. Then I would take the bus because I was a little off campus. I would take the bus to school, walk to my class. But I decided I started to do this thing where on the way to the class, I would actually get to school early and I would go into this little like garden space that was pretty enclosed and not a lot of people were there. And I would just like lay on the grass and like try to practice like mindfulness. And I would like try to empty my mind. I don't remember why I started. I think it was just the pressures of life. And I started to really enjoy that. It just felt really good. I felt like myself relaxing. I felt like I was starting to think about things like why am I doing this? Why am I a senior in mechanical engineering? Do I want to work as an engineer? It was more practical stuff like that, but I was just thinking like what is life about? And I was doing that twice a week like for weeks. And I honestly it like made me a calmer, more tranquil, more balanced person. And this was just like basic mindfulness stuff. And I was still doing yoga it wasn't regular, but every now and then too. So that's that. And then I s- met some people that were Christians, particularly one person. They were like Pentecostal Christians. So I would have some discussions with them. And I remember just telling them like, "Oh, I guess I'm technically Catholic, but I don't even know what that means. And I just remember them saying like, "Oh, Catholics kind of suck," and I'm being defensive about it, even though I didn't really know what it meant to be Catholic. I just know that like there was an entity called the Catholic Church. So that was interesting. And then so that's all happening, and this is college. And then when things start to spice up is when I enter my master's degree. So between my undergraduate and my master's degree in mechanical engineering, I went to Europe and then I went to China, but those things didn't really affect me. And then, like I said in my health testimony, I got really sick. So that was important. I got super sick in that summer in between. Just unprecedented illness. I had never been that sick before, and it kind of made me think back to my younger days of thinking about death. But then I got better for a little bit, so I let it go. And then my master's year, I remember I dated someone, and not a good relationship. I'm not going to lie to you at all. But throughout this relationship, I started to think about like how this person was not a very good person. And I was like, what does that mean? What is it like? I've never really thought of like being a good person, being a bad person. And then also I started to reflect on myself too. Like seeing her as like, wow, she's doing some really malicious stuff. And then looking at myself being like, well, I also do like terrible things. And then starting to think about, am I pleasant to be around? Am I a person that people enjoy being around? Am I a good person? So I started to think about that in a relationship. And then I started to think about religion in general. And it was weird. So this is going to be a weird. I started thinking about like I should be going to church during this master's year. And I remember the girl I was dating, she did not like that because it was like, taking time from our relationship, which it was just a selfish thing. Like I can't explain the whole thing, but she was getting upset by that. But I was like, no, 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 I think I do need to like reconnect or connect the first time with some sort of religion or like principles in life, maybe even like a stoicism or something. So that was happening in that we broke up. And this, when her and I broke up during my master's degree year, or right after my master's degree year, that's when things started to get crazy because I got really sick. I think it was a follow up from my previous sickness about a year before. Started to get really sick. I was working as an engineer, and so being sick, I was like, I should really try to figure out what the heck life is about because like this sickness doesn't seem like a joke here. So one of the things that happened was I was starting to read a little bit, and I was discovering this thing called YouTube, which sounds kind of crazy because I'm not that old. I guess I'm a little old, but I had YouTube had been around, but I had never really gone into it. But then I got to a certain point where I was so sick, I would just go home after work. I used to train, like trail run, do some jujitsu and Muay Thai, but I was getting too sick where I was like, it wasn't even pleasant to do anymore. I would just get lightheaded and stuff. And if you want to hear more about that, you can look at my health testimony. So I was getting sick, but then I was starting to read and watch YouTube. And then my buddy at the time really loved Joe Rogan. And so he introduced me to Joe Rogan, and we watched like this doctor who was eating all meat. That was kind of one of the intro things that he showed me because we just thought it was crazy. But from that, I started to watch Joe Rogan more, a couple of episodes here and there. And then I watched a Jordan Peterson episode with Joe Rogan. And that kind of blew my mind because Jordan Peterson was saying things like you need to like be a man, you need to do hard things, you need to be a good person, you need to grow in virtue, you need to be strong, you need to fight against evil, stuff like that. And that all that stuff really resonated with me. I was like, even when I was a kid, every kid is like, I want to be the superhero, I want to fight evil. But I had just forgotten that with like money and success and thinking about that stuff. I'd forgotten it, but when it was reintroduced to me by Jordan Peterson, it just struck my heart. I was like, this is it. Like I have a little time left on this earth. That's what I'll dedicate myself to is like becoming a better person. So I was binging Jordan Peterson stuff, and he has this biblical series. I think he's expanded it now, but at the time it was Old Testament, I think Genesis, and I was devouring that. And I was like, "Wait, the Bible has like this stuff about like what it means to be a human being and like fighting evil and happiness and virtue. I really want to get into that." So I started reading the Old Testament with Jordan Peterson and listening to his stuff. And then I started getting into history. And this is going to be over like 2 years span where I'm just sick, trying to figure it out, working, and I'm just reading a bunch of stuff, watching a bunch of stuff. I'm getting into St. Augustine. I'm learning about actual history. Before I feel like I'd only learned history from like 1776 and on. So I'm learning about history, all these things. I start to read G.K. Chesterton, C.S. Lewis about Christianity, what it means to be a man. I'm reading about the history of like Buddhism. I'm reading about other religions, reading about Stoicism, the Romans, Marcus Aurelius, all these guys, and just watching a bunch of videos. So that's going on. And I neglected to mention, but at this time as well, but before this, my brother had kind of like reverted or converted to the Catholic faith. And this is kind of a cool side tangent story, so I'll tell this too. But my brother had his own journey. I'm not going to say all of his stuff, but he had a friend in high school who's still a friend of ours who was raised nothing. And he did this whole journey. And he told my brother this. He, like, I think it was he wanted to rob a bank because he was like, there's no meaning to life or anything. I think it was robbing a bank, but I could be wrong about that. But he did this whole journey. I think it was like a year or more than a year long, where he was like, I'm just going to make sure that there's no God and no morality first before I rob a bank and like, just try to get a bunch of money and live a crazy life. So he did that. He looked into God and then he looked into religion and he came back to my brother. I don't know how, maybe over a year later. And he told my brother, he was like, I do believe in God now. And I think that Christianity is the real religion and that the Catholic Church is like the true church of Christianity. Or no, he said the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church is the true church of Christianity, one of those two. And he was like trying to figure it out between those two. And my brother was like, dang, that's crazy. That's insane. So my brother ended up, I think, trying to prove him wrong, his friend wrong. He looked into it as well. And eventually he was like, oh, I'm going to go to church. And I remember him going back to church, going to Catholic church, and me being like, not really paying attention. I was like, oh, if he wants to do that, whatever, I don't care. But I ended up living with my brother. So I feel like living with him and seeing how he lived, how he had changed, to the extent that I knew he changed, because I didn't really know him when he was younger. I didn't really know anyone really when I was younger. But seeing the extent that he had changed made me curious about the Catholic Church and Christianity in general. So I was already like predisposed towards it. But when I started looking at stuff, I was looking at the history of Christianity and Islam and all these things and just pouring over. And I was like, it was like filling me up with just these thoughts of goodness and truth. The idea of truth, even like objective truth, was like kind of mind blowing to me. I was like, I never cared about this before. Why didn't I care? And so, yeah, I just kept going. It was a lot of reading. I was reading health stuff too, but a lot of reading, a lot of watching videos, thinking, just sitting there thinking. That was a huge thing. I think a big turning point was I started to pray the rosary eventually. And I think that was a huge, like every day I'd pray the rosary, huge changing point. But yeah, that just like kept going until I was like, basically became like a bona fide Catholic. Like I was doing the things. I decided I was like, the Catholic Church is the true church. I think the big thing for me intellectually was just like whether Jesus Christ was a real person in history and whether his resurrection was actually real. And once I came to understand that that's a pretty reasonable thing to believe, I was off to the races. I didn't think of Protestantism. I didn't think of Orthodoxy. I was like Catholic Church all the way. And I haven't found a reason to go back on that yet, honestly. Nothing even close. Some people are like, oh, Orthodox Church is kind of, and I'm like, I have not seen that. So, I mean, if anyone wants to debate that, that's fine, but I have not seen that at all. So I just started practicing the Catholic faith. And then right after that, and so that's like the big thing right there. What was I thinking of? I was thinking of like, I want to be a good person. What does that mean? I want to fight evil. I want to know the truth. And those things are what kind of sparked me into this Catholic adventure that I'm on. And then I guess I'll get into a little bit afterwards. But after that, I was off to the races. I was obsessed reading about history, theology, philosophy. and just all of it too, pagan, Christian, otherwise. And then I quit my engineering job, which was a big deal to me, a lot of money. I went on mission for a year, which was very formative, getting me around other Catholics because it's in a big city where I was, it's hard, honestly. And some of the Catholics you meet, like, they're not really into it. A lot of these cradle Catholics, and this might sound defamatory or something, but like they're just not really into it for whatever reason. And I know it's not all cradle Catholics, but that's just the vibe I got. So when I went on mission, it was just people that were super on fire and we're just hanging out together for a year. So that was very powerful. And I was already deep in prayer. I hadn't even learned from like the stuff we're talking about, like St. Francis of Sales, like you need to pray an hour in the morning every day. I had never even heard that, but I was waking up 5 a.m., 2 hours of scripture and prayer, rosary in the morning. I would be praying throughout the day. And I would just be getting this from the saints. I was pouring through the saints, Mother Teresa, Saint Augustine, Saint Anthony of the Desert, all these guys, Saint Francis of Assisi. I was just reading their biographies. It was just electric. And then I came back and I was like, I'm just gonna be like a poor person and just like try to help people out. So all I was doing was like I was working like when I got back from mission, like working normal jobs, at grocery store or restaurant or working for my dad and just like volunteering at the church, just teaching catechism, getting to know people, trying to help them in their spiritual journeys. And that was great. And then I discerned the priesthood. I applied to the diocese I'm in, got accepted. The summer before, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm called to the priesthood. Or I was thinking maybe religious life, but then I was like, no, excuse me, not even that either. And then, so, I mean, after that, I was like, well, I still love this stuff. I'm going to get a master's degree. So I got my master's degree in theology. And then, kind of like now I'm here where I'm just like, I need to like just give back. I know it was like, that was very quick, but like that was my life, my spiritual life. But yeah, just like now and for the last 7 years, I've just been like, I need to learn as much as I can about the spiritual life, about the Catholic faith, about the truth, the goodness. And I do want to talk about the goodness a lot because this is something that's not taught for whatever reason in normal Catholic circles, but the importance of, because people talk about prayer a lot, which is obviously great, but the importance of like specifically trying to grow in virtue and like making that an active part of your spiritual life. I remember reading books by Father Dubé, kind of like deep prayer, deep conversion, understanding that the spiritual life is more than just like saying your rote word prayers, but it's like actively trying to become holy, receiving the grace, but also like making conscious decisions to do the right thing in every moment. So learning about all that stuff is just, yeah, I think I'll stop there. But yeah, it was just over this last 7 years has been like just learning and trying to actively convert in every moment, trying to do the right thing, trying to grow in virtue. And that's what it's been. And I think that's what it'll be until I die, hopefully, is trying to just grow in that. But yeah, that was, I think that's my general spiritual testimony. I don't know if that was super helpful. I kind of left some stuff out, but I think I'll leave it there. And hopefully this is just helpful for people. If you're thinking about religion, thinking about the Catholic faith, thinking about goodness and truth, beauty wasn't as big of a part of my conversion, honestly. I appreciate it. I think because those things they're one, right? Truth, goodness, beauty, unity, stuff like that. They're all one. I do think loving truth and loving goodness help me to more appreciate beauty and to understand it and to see it. It's kind of interesting how those things relate. But yeah, I think I'll leave that there. Let me know if you have any questions. I feel like I left some stuff out, but it's okay. It's totally okay. If I really need to say some more, I'll say some more some other time. But that's a spiritual testimony. Hopefully it's just helpful just to hear a journey of someone. I didn't really get into specifics because I didn't want to talk about sins and people and stuff, but they're all there. They're all there. Everyone's got their struggles. But that's that. So please like, subscribe, comment, share. Let me know what you think about the show. God bless you. God be with you. And I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.